Let there be light. It's not perfect, but it's a start. Hello and welcome back to DriveDriverDriven. I'm humble, and here is the fruits of our efforts. Getting light into the garage, getting kind of a workbench set up, enough that thankfully now we can figure out where we left off on this car and get back to it. So just real quick, this is just a quick and dirty worktop. Never mind all the camera gear. I did finally find it. But this is just like some butcher block top, pretty heavy stuff actually, which is great for a worktop. So this section was something like 8 or 9 feet long. So I just cut one down for here, and I took the scrap and just set it on this side. Eventually what I would like to do is duplicate this for this section, and then whatever I decide doing back here, whether I keep this and just put some cabinets in or just do the wall cabinets. Those plans are kind of changing just due to the cost of the AC setup. So I might just make do with what I've got, slap some butcher block on this and call it done for the moment. And then we'll do some upgrades down the road. But anyway, on to the MK. Remember this thing? It's been months now, and we got to figure out where we are or were and get back to it. So first things first, let's unpack the car, because what I did previously before the move was everything that belonged, well, most things I should say, most of the parts for the car that went with the car were either in the interior or down in these boxes here. So first things first, let's unpack the car and kind of get back to where we left off, and we'll talk about a couple of things that we're gonna have to redo or smooth out, stuff that I found when I was putting everything together. So first steps first, let's get this unpacked. Got the interior cleaned out, somewhat organized under this table here. Now I can sort of catch up on where we left off. So like one of the last things that we did was troubleshooting these little CAN hubs from Haltech. Turns out one of these units had 2 bad ports and the other one had a single bad port. And one of the last sort of troubleshooting steps was just getting a couple of replacements. If you want to go back and watch the last video, build video, I kind of cover what we did, but it took a minute. But that being said, got 2 new units. And I don't know if I mentioned in the last video, but if you're running all this stuff instead of like a Nexus or something like that, and you have a bunch of CAN hubs connected, there is a difference between what is connected to the ECU and what is connected to the PDM. I would say things that need high-speed communication. So, for instance, our wideband controller, our temperature sensors for exhaust, anything engine related, you'll want them connected to the ECU for high-speed connectivity. Things that are less important to engine health and have slower connections or slower data slower data speeds can connect to the PDM. So that is stuff like our dash, our buttons, our tire pressure monitoring system, stuff like that, where it's arguably, let's say, less critical, but it's also slower communications, and we can just connect that to the PDM because those things don't need to update 100 or 1,000 times a second or whatever. So that's kind of the difference between the two. And so that's the way I've connected my hubs, is high-speed stuff connects to the ECU, low-speed stuff connects to the PDM. And there's still a lot. We got to sort this all out and clean it up, but that's the gist. The other thing I noticed that I mentioned briefly earlier was down here in the footwell. I have this sort of black backing plate that we created to support the battery and mount that stuff. And it looks good. It matches the sidewall down here, and I really like the way it looks in here. However, right here on this chassis rail, it's too close, and the panel that's supposed to go here on the inside doesn't slip past that block. So I need to pull all this stuff out, just trim like 1/8 of an inch off of that edge, and then put it all back together with this interior panel, and that can go in for the last time. Back here, I've sort of got just the rear tub temporarily fastened with Clecos, ditto for the rear diffuser. This setup actually worked well for moving it, just attaching everything to the body, and it kept everything, well, out of the way, out of the way of potential damage being stored with something else. And this actually worked super good. So if you have to move a car, a project car, first of all, don't. But second of all, if it has body panels that you can attach temporarily, just do that to keep things a bit safer. And it really worked out well. I think another thing that we did last is I mounted our fuel pressure regulator, our filter, and kind of got it staged and ready for when the fuel system needs to go in. And that's going to be on our short list, kind of as I get my bearings again and figure out where we were. The other thing that we need to do is up here on the engine and transmission need to come out. I have, well, it's easier to see on the other side, but down here, these engine mounts, they're about 1 inch and change tall, 25 millimeters for those on the metric system, and I have new mounts that are about half that and a little bit stiffer, kind of a higher durometer, and we have a couple of options. I found the box over here. Again, this is another thing that arrived right before the move. So we have these red pucks, and these are, oh, that's right. So these are, let's say, 3/4 of an inch in depth, and the existing mounts are 1.5 inches tall. And these are actually for body isolators for body on frame cars. And I have a couple of different options, a couple of different sizes, and also a couple of different durometers. So long story short, what I'm getting at is the new mounts should lower the engine by about 3/4 of an inch, half an inch, give or take. It'll be a little more rigidly mounted, but in a car that's entirely NVH, I don't think that's really an issue. And hopefully it gives us a little more hood clearance, both here on the nose of the valve cover and over here on the ITBs. I still think we're gonna have to cut the hood for the ITBs to poke through, but we'll burn that bridge when we get to it. But as I was saying, so these mounts, the engine, everything will have to come out. We'll have to clean up the chassis because we still have a little bit of work to do up here. And then while the motor's out, we can start to pre-run some of our fuel plumbing, some of our oil plumbing, and get things ready, because also up here in the front on the nose, we'll need a location for our oil air separator, and then the lines that come in and out of this, the lines that run down here on the side of the engine, we're gonna have to figure out routing for all that stuff. So, and of course, in order to get the engine out, we're gonna have to pull the cooling package back off the front of the car. It's not absolutely necessary, but when you're reaching in here with the crane, the additional room and not having to worry about damaging stuff is just worth the extra effort. I hesitate to call this an addition, but we had this in the old garage. However, we didn't really have room to put it anywhere. And I don't know if it'll necessarily stay here or if I might move it to like this wall here. But it is nice to have the whiteboard set up and to be able to make notes. And so we're going to start doing that to have our list prepared for the car and for work. So currently we need cooling package off, engine out, start on the fuel system plumbing, and we need to verify that A, our wiring survived, and B, kind of do a little bit of a refresher, because I'll be honest, I'm a little foggy on how things were left off. I know I have a couple of blank buttons on the button pad, so I just want to make sure that everything works like it should. And if I remember right, I believe Haltech released a major update since the last time we worked on this with regards to how the IC7 screen and the ECU and PDM all work together, so that now you can share sensors from the dash to the PDM or ECU and vice versa, which was not the case before. So I need to go through and read some manuals and do those updates now that I've got kind of everything ready to go. Got the battery connected, went through, tested a few things. I had to make some notes. And I guess that's kind of my first takeaway getting sort of back into this, is reestablishing your baseline, figuring out where you were at and what you were doing and the state of the various projects. I did end up moving the whiteboard over here simply because trying to write on it over on this side was just too difficult. And I really like having it right in front of me here. And it's just easier to see, read, write, etc. So you can see I have, I don't know how well this will show up, electric, plumbing, mechanical, body. Those are kind of the four big ones. And the first thing I did was to get our, electrical system hooked up and to test. So as I mentioned, I hooked up the battery. And so if I kick these on, so you can see our dash comes on. If it comes up, there we go. The beep you heard was the TPMS coming online. And we have our button pad here. Now, a couple functions that I've done on the button pad. You'll hear the click when I press it. Well, that's not working now. All right, well, I'll have to figure that out. So this test, and this is why you test things. So our starter relay is not working at the moment, but it was working earlier. So I'm gonna have to dive into that. Our lights, so that should be our idle lights on. And something I made a note of is we should have our DRLs on. That's the white bar. And those have been crossed with my turn signals up front here. That one's not even working. So I've got to correct that. In the back, you see our license plate light, and we have our idle lights in the rear. Now we should have our headlights on, our low beams. Those are, I think, our high beams, actually. Aha, okay. It's all coming back to me now. So those are our low beams. And then we have an indicator here. And if I turn on our high beams, it lights up orange there. And we have our blue indicator on the dash. So we're back to normal, but our DRLs still aren't working because they're messed up. If I turn on our hazards, you can see how the DRLs are blinking instead of my turn signals. So that verifies that those are messed up. But in the back, our turn signals are working like they're supposed to. And if I put it into reverse, we should have our backup lights. And those are working. And our side repeaters are working like they're supposed to. So I have our high beams here on the wheel, but I also have flash to pass set up on a button. If I can do this in hurry, you can saw it briefly there, but that's for track use, track duty, not for use on the street, obviously. With LEDs, that just strobes. It instantly loses somebody their night vision. So do not use that on the street. Save that for the track. Other buttons I have here is for overrides for our pump, our fog light. So right now the other two buttons aren't doing anything. But all in all, well, other than our start relay, which just failed, and I'll have to look into, everything else is working as it's supposed to. I have a couple of wiring projects I realize I have to finish, like our brake pressure sensor plugs, and I think this is our throttle position sensor. One of the pins came out, so I need to fix that. But otherwise, wiring for the most part is good to go. And again, that's why it's good to test, is even 5 minutes ago, things were working and they are no longer. So we'll get that sorted, but from wiring onto plumbing. So like I said, for plumbing, well, we're gonna have to pull the engine out anyway, but we have all of the plumbing basically to do. So our water, our oil, and our fuel, but also we have to redo our front brakes because we crunched those the first time we tried to put the motor in, and we had that cross member up that was just too close to the engine, and so we had to chop that out. So one of the things that we have to correct when we pull the motor out is to clean that up and to redo our front brake system and get that sorted. Also on our list, mechanical, speaking of engine out, that's where that is, cleaning up our chassis. I had to go through our boxes down here to figure out what parts were where and to verify that I had the parts I needed and that they made it into these boxes. So one of them here, the drive shaft, is down in this one, and I just need to clean it up, paint it, make it look pretty before it goes in the car. And then another item on there is the rear driver's side hub. When I pressed the bearings into this hub, I didn't press them in enough, and I need to correct that. There's just a little hint of a wiggle on the hub, which I don't like, and there's no reason for it to be there, being that everything is new. I was just too ginger with the press when I was putting it together, so I need to pull all of this, pull it apart, and basically just press it in the correct amount, and then put everything back together. And at that time, I can put our rear axles in, which also need to go on the car. Last but not least, while we're back here for this setup for the cage, we have a racing rain light that goes on the middle here, and it's the same rain light that we put on the Ultima. It's an FIA spec flashing rain light / third brake light. So when the brakes come on, that will light up, and then there's a rain light override to turn on just the rain light or fog light while you're on the track. And again, it's for high visibility, high fog, which we get here in California, especially at tracks like Laguna Seca in the morning. It does get incredibly foggy. People don't realize that. And so it's just a good safety item to have. Not that, having a bright yellow car isn't enough, but it really isn't. And having something like that for a car that may be coming up on you with a much higher rate of speed, because again, this isn't going to be God's gift to top speed. Realistically, it'll top out at 130, and there can be a good difference in somebody on the front straight coming down and barreling on me. Like, I'll be topping out at 130, but other cars could be 20 miles an hour or faster. So that's just a good safety item to have for track duty. Not a lot of work, but we're back on the car again, trying to figure out where we're at and where we're going. And I guess that's really important when you have to stop or take a hiatus on a project like this. And getting your bearings again, getting organized, and kind of figuring things out before you start diving into stuff. I think that's just the way to go before you really start diving in. So from now on, though, it's nose to the grindstone. I really want to get this car done. I would like to have at least my major inspections done before the rainy season hits. That way I'm not dragging it out through the rain or anything like that. And before it gets too cold, because I got to relearn all that stuff up here for this new area. New inspection centers, new ref areas, different DMVs. I'm going to have to take this to all new people. So we'll figure that out as we get to it. That being said, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.